Dead Poets Society. A strange movie title, winner of an Oscar for Best Screenplay and one of the most inspirational movies of all time. The incomparable Robin Williams plays John Keating, the new English teacher at an elite private boys' school who inspires his students to rebel against conformity through his unorthodox teaching methods and his passionate spirit. In one moving scene, Professor Keating gathers the boys around him, lowers himself on one knee, and tries to explain poetry to them. He says, "We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion. And medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for." To quote from Whitman, "O me, O life, of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, what good amid these, O me, O life? Answer, that you are here, that life exists and identity, that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. That the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. What will your verse be?" You see, Keating's spirited contention is that a good life is a passionate one, lived according to one's unique talents and interests, and that discovering and unleashing your unique essence is inherently worthwhile because it yields true fulfillment. Keating wants his students to rebel against conformity in a personal way by altering their individual thinking, pursuing their sincere passions, and sharing those passions daringly with the world. Now, we're going to explore that inspiring premise in this program by asking, who are you really? Why are you here in this particular place and time? What is your authentic voice, your unique passions? And what verse can you contribute to your life and to the world? Now that said, let me assure you, this is not feel-good fluff, nor is it filled with abstract concepts. You will become aware, not simply theoretically, but as a deep recognition and sensation. Yes, the concepts are strange and somewhat paradoxical, but they are extremely life-enhancing. I mean, I've lived them. I've been contributing my unique verse for the past 6 decades. And I'm not special or gifted in any way, trust me. I just follow a simple mantra. If I wanted to do something, I did it. And if I didn't want to do it any longer, I stopped doing it. Look, I've been an altar boy, an artist, a professional magician, and an executive at a Fortune 50 firm. I've been saved, sued, rolled in the dough, and lost my shirt. I've invested in and run a high-tech electronics firm and a healthcare company, and I've pumped gas and sold shoes. I've launched and shut down an internet media company, and I've written several books and given speeches all over the world, including a TED Talk. I've also sat in my office stuck, unable to figure out what the hell to do with my life. Now, I say this not to impress you, but to impress upon you that you too can live a life that you want to live, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, if you realize that you are not your past living in the present, and that you have the guts to step out of that limiting story, because it is a story. Look, I'll never forget an enlightening conversation with college friends back in the economic heydays of the 90s. It has stayed with me for all these years, and often it helps me inform my decision making, especially during, really chaotic, uncertain times like these. So anyway, as we relaxed and enjoyed a Labor Day cookout, not general good health and fortune, I spurted out that I was once again leaving my job and venturing into the great unknown. Now at the time, we were all disengaged, yet seemingly secure in executive positions with established organizations, unquestioningly embracing the status quo. So, upon hearing my news, one bewildered friend glanced at me. I can remember this now. He shook his head from side to side and he professed, "I could never do what you do." "What's that?" I asked. "You know," he answered, pausing to sip his imported beer. "No security and risking it all." "Security is an illusion," I replied. "It's you guys who are risking it all. And for what it's worth, I could never do what you all are doing." You see, what they were doing, what many are still doing, was risking their one and only life, playing it safe instead of playing it with passion. And by playing it with passion, I don't mean following one's passion. I've never followed my passions because, frankly, I have no idea what my singular passion is. Perhaps that's why I'm so amused by the late, great comedian Mitch Hedberg's absurd declaration. He said, "I'm sick of following my dreams, man. I'm just going to ask where they're going and hook up with them later." But why follow them? Why hook up with them? Why not be the leader of your life and let your dreams hook up with you? That's what I'm hoping to get across to you in this program. How to escape the made-up story in your head and do what you really want to do with your life. All right, let me begin by taking you back to the start in order to create a bit of context. It all began over pancakes with a friend and with him telling me about his son and how his son was living at home, unhappy and stuck, but so damn smart that there was no reasoning with him. And I remember thinking, if we could just wipe his memory clean, we could give his life a fresh start and get him moving again. You see, having studied and taught belief and behavior change for most of my professional career, I knew that how my friend's son interpreted his past, all the experiences he had up to date, the way he saw, felt, and thought about life and his place in it, is what had him stuck. Nothing more. Without even meeting him, I knew that he was much more than the story in his head. Well, look, that idea of wiping his memory clean, it grabbed hold of me, probably because, at that particular time, I was feeling pretty stuck as well. And as I played that what-if thought experiment around and round in my mind, it suddenly felt like an interesting concept for a movie. So, out of the blue, I decided to write a screenplay and see if I could get it produced. Why? Because I felt like doing it. And it was during that spontaneous process, as I ran into one obstacle after another, and frankly on the verge of giving up, that I met my writing partner. And together we set off to make it happen. And together we ran into one obstacle after another and made surprising discoveries and connections. See, life is really funny that way. Anyway, after many painstaking months of working with Hollywood consultants, kept alive by our willful ignorance and stubborn persistence of vision, we finally finished the project. Or, to be more precise, the movie finished writing itself through us. It was a really strange and enlightening experience. It's like when Harriet Beecher Stowe was told that Uncle Tom's Cabin was too long, and she replied, "I didn't write it. It wrote itself." And surprisingly, that creative journey also gifted us various insights which shattered many of our deeply held illusions, especially around concepts like belief, personal identity, having a sense of control over life, insights that we felt compelled to share with you. So the movie is about two brothers, Phil and Peter. Peter is a compulsive and driven movie studio executive who has everything money can buy. He epitomizes the Hollywood and Silicon Valley definitions of success: fame, fortune, and power. And then there's his brother Phil. Although a brilliant and imaginative guy, he's a minimum wage slacker with no ambition and no concern about his image or social standing. He's disorganized and carefree, and Peter hates that about him. Phil, in turn, resents his brother's controlling nature and Peter's judgment of him. Now, despite their estranged relationship, Peter arranges a biking excursion for Phil's 40th birthday, and a few hours into the trip, Phil has an accident and gets knocked unconscious, which ultimately results in, yeah, you guessed it, Phil losing his memory. And calculating Peter suddenly gets a brilliant idea. He decides to manipulate Phil's memories by using his influence and storytelling skills to create a new, successful life story for Phil while Phil is recovering in the hospital. And the subsequent events, both hilarious and heartfelt, throw the story into a chaotic and transformative experience for all of the characters. Now, I knew the story would make a very entertaining and inspiring film, and I still do. So much so that while working to get the movie made, we've turned the screenplay into a novel for people to enjoy. But more important than stirring people's emotions, I hope the story would awaken people to the fact that their lives are unwittingly directed by their memories, by a limiting story in their heads, instead of by the vibrant experiences and amazing possibilities of life. I know what you're thinking. I mean, this feels like an alien concept. If you ask people if they think they're living in a story, they'll look at you sideways. And I know this because I've asked them, and probably on far too many occasions, because many times the suspicious looks come with outright denial or even rage. But the reality is, whether you are aware of this paradigm or not, you are in fact living your life lost in a constructed story, like an actor lost in his or her movie role. Western psychology tells us that human beings are not born with an identity. No, instead we construct our identities by integrating our life experiences into an evolving story of ourself. And even though over time our values, preferences, goals, personalities, even the very cells that animate our physical bodies all change significantly. But this constructed story stays with us because it provides us with a sense of unity and of meaning. It helps us feel solid and make sense of ourselves and of the randomness of life. This autobiographical narrative, which again is a personal construction, a made-up movie in our minds, integrates memories from our past with our perceived present and our imagined future, and with everything you'd find on the set of a movie. Various characters, props, imagery, settings, plot points, themes, a dramatic life story with goals and conflicts and heroes and villains, and a causally connected beginning, middle, and end. Now, this is a critical distinction which hopefully will help make everything that follows crystal clear. I am not saying that we are emulating the structure of movies. No, to the contrary. I'm saying that movies are emulating us. Story structure emerges from being human. So screenplays are created based on how we've been wired, how we've been molded by evolution and cultural conditioning to see, feel, and think about our own lives. Movies and other invented stories, like novels and myths and folklore, even most marketing, mirror how our brains have been programmed. And this is precisely why we relate to them and get drawn in emotionally and maintain a state where what we're experiencing on a flat screen feels real and significant to us. Now, even though I intellectually understand the power of stories to move people, so much so that I've taught many of the world's leading organizations how to use storytelling to influence people's behavior. The aha that I experienced while writing the screenplay revealed an insight that I was totally unprepared for. Frankly, it shocked me. Let me describe for you what happened. So, we were deep into the process of writing the screenplay. And we're following all of the script writing convention, right? Connecting the backstories of the characters into this tightly woven chain of events. And we made sure we had plenty of tension and conflict and surprise, all leading to a predetermined dramatic ending. Look, in case you didn't know it, screenwriters typically write the ending of the movie first, and that drives everything else. Anyway, at one point, we felt the plot stall. There was an uneventful interruption in that contrived chain of events, which is a big movie writing no-no. No one likes boring. And so my co-writer, Shannon, she suggested that our character, Phil, do something outrageous to create more excitement. Now, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember having this knee-jerk reaction to her suggestion. Because to me, it was completely out of character for Phil to do something like that. It just didn't make sense to me. I remember saying, Phil would never do that. I may have even thrown in an expletive or two. But here's what happened, and it was really strange. Those words reverberated in my head like an echo. Phil would never do that. And I found myself transported outside of my body and away from the conversation, like looking at myself, saying those words. Phil would never do that. And I thought, what the hell does that even mean? Phil doesn't even exist. We made him up, and we can make him do anything we want him to do. But we couldn't. It just didn't make sense to us. It didn't feel right, and we were afraid that it would interrupt the flow of the movie and snap the audience out of their trance, out of their suspension of disbelief. You see, it just didn't feel right because we had spent close to a year creating detailed backstories of the characters. You see, their personalities were defined by those backstories, and we knew if we kept the script coherent, that the audience would recognize the characters and empathize with them because they would either see themselves in the characters' behaviors or they'd see people, that they know. You may be thinking, well, that sounds like serious stereotyping to me. And guess what? You'd be right. That's how movie characters are created. And it's exactly what happens to all of us in real life. Our backstory creates our narrative identity, the mental concept of us, a character role that we take on and who people believe us to be in a particular context. But they're not seeing our essence or our potential. They're seeing a simplified version, a stereotype, a cliche. We allow ourselves to become constructed characters, and these character roles become our identity. In other words, the roles we play are, to us and everyone around us, the essence of who we are. It is a big lie. And so the breakthrough insight, if we couldn't make a fictional character and one we invented do something out of character, imagine how powerful the stories we create about ourselves and our minds really are. I mean, to us and to others. Living within this story paradigm as a scripted character will not only affect your perception and experience of the world, it will also limit your potential to live an exciting and fulfilling life. If you don't step out of that story, your constructed roles will end up playing you, and life will end up simply dragging you along. Owen Flanagan, a leading consciousness researcher, writes, "Evidence strongly suggests that humans in all cultures come to cast their own identity in some sort of narrative form. In the next 2 sessions, we'll examine the concept of stories and narrative thinking, how it was conditioned into us, and how it severely affects our lives and the lives of those around us. Because the reality is this: you are not a character in a story defined by an imaginary past. But you can't escape that reality if you don't even know that you're living in a story. Now, can you?"